Welcome to Biocanic's Health Intelligence Exchange community, where leading practitioners in integrative health approaches will discuss how they solve the most challenging and common health issues. These regular Q&A discussions are designed to take a deep dive into case studies and integrative approaches in order to elevate the collective knowledge of both experienced and new practitioners alike. Biocanic's Health Intelligence Exchange, your community for functional medicine.
All right, welcome to the Health Intelligence Exchange, everyone. I'm Jeremy Malecha, CEO of Biocanic, and I'm joined today by our guest, Dr. Shivani Gupta from Fusionary Formulas, and we'll be discussing how Ayurvedic and Turmeric rewire inflammation at the root. Make sure to subscribe wherever you're watching or listening so you never miss an episode. And for those of you joining us live today, we'll be transitioning to a live Q&A towards the end of this presentation, so feel free to start posting your questions in the comments below wherever you're watching. Dr. Shivani Gupta is an Ayurvedic practitioner, entrepreneur, and founder of Fusionary Formulas and the Modern Ayurveda program. With a deep passion for bridging Eastern wisdom with Western science, she helps modern women reduce inflammation, improve digestion, and reclaim their health through practical, sustainable self-care. A sought-after speaker who's presented at over 50 physician and wellness conferences, Dr. Gupta is redefining what it means to integrate Ayurveda into everyday life, making it accessible, effective, and aligned with the pace of modern living. Awesome. Welcome, Shivani. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Good. It's always a mouthful getting through the bios, but I'd love to start with your founder journey and what got you started in the field and really how you got to where you are today.
Absolutely. So like so many people in our space of integrative medicine, functional medicine, I had all my own health issues growing up. And what's interesting is I grew up in two worlds. I grew up in Houston, Texas, living the, immigrant life, and my parents were doing their best for me, but I'd get sick all the time, go to the pediatrician, and I'd get these scripts written for antibiotics. And I'd take them, get better. And when I go to India every year to see my grandparents and my cousins, I would get sick, but my grandma would just reach into the spice cabinet and just mixing a few spices together and creating a concoction or a tea or an elixir, I'd be healed. And I kept wondering, who's right? Like one way in America, we go to Eckerd's, pick up the antibiotics, take them, and we get better. But her spices work. And how does that work? Who's the better solution? And so fast forward, by the time I reached college, I was so sick all the time. And I looked around and I thought, everyone else has an immune system that works, but somehow I don't. So I need to go figure this out. And I looked at my parents and I said, we're in the land of yoga and Ayurveda here in India. Could we go see if this thing can heal me? Maybe I just need to be healed. And it completely worked. And I fell in love with Ayurveda. And I thought, why is this system of medicine and health and healing just not known in the West? Like, how come no one's sharing this? And I made it my mission to find the golden nuggets out of that treasure chest called Ayurveda and bring those back to the United States and to the West, where we could use them and apply them to ourselves. And Ayurveda is over 5,000 years old. So there have been millions of people, billions of people who've experienced it. But I find that in the modern pace of life that we live, sometimes we need things in a bite-sized way. And so that's what I do. I take it and I distill it down to what's most important for us to use. And so I did my master's in Ayurvedic sciences because I wanted to write books about Ayurveda. And then when I was in herbology class, I started learning about all these spices and what they could do. And being Indian, I thought, I eat those spices. We cook with cumin for a pre-digestive benefit. We use hing. It helps with any gas and bloating and hard to digest foods. We use fennel seeds. We know those help with digestion post any meal. We know cinnamon helps with blood sugar levels. So a lot of these spices I was using, but I didn't know that they had such superfood level benefits. And that got me excited. I was like, okay, if you're telling me instead of maca and all these weird goji berry superfoods I don't like the taste of, you're saying instead of those, I can eat super spices. I like that idea. But why are we not then using these in our daily life or in Western medicine in a way that can help us? Like, why, when I go to the doctor, are they still giving me these things that have side effects? Mm-hmm. And so that led me on a path to doing my PhD dissertation on turmeric, which always surprises everyone. They're like, how could you do a whole PhD on turmeric? Well, I sat in the science for years, finally got through and published my PhD dissertation, but I fell in love with turmeric because turmeric has such multifaceted benefits. And the most important one to me was it's antiviral, antibacterial, and antifungal. And I needed an immune system that works. And so when I finished, all of a sudden, I would tell someone, like, they'd say, my throat hurts. And I'd say, just take turmeric for that. Or someone would say, my knee hurts. And I say, just take turmeric for that. And so my family, I'm married into a family of all MD surgeons in Boca Raton, Florida. They looked at me and they said, why don't you just make your own if you're actually going to say that to everybody forever? And I was like, are you crazy? Like, who creates a supplement company? That's a big undertaking. And the universe aligned, all the right people came around me, and I did create one. But when I went to create it, I sat down with the factory and I said, listen, I'm not just creating turmeric to create turmeric. There's a million turmerics out there. I want to make one that compels orthopedic surgeons to stop giving me NSAIDs and painkillers when I have plantar fasciitis or knee pain. I want them to say, you could take turmeric for that, just like I say. And so that's what I built 10 years ago, was formulations by going to India, seeking the best curcumin I could find with the best suppliers, and then bringing it back to the US for production with pre, mid, and post-production third-party testing. And so that's been my work for 10 years now. And I've kept the supplier the same. I've kept a lot of factors the same because I have this raving fan base of this product that I made. And then since then, I've become a teacher of Ayurveda who gets to share it in a lot of other ways as well.
Yeah. And that's super amazing. And I'd love to hear just a little bit more about kind of the brand that you've built today, just for some of our practitioners that are also listening, just because it's been a very unique experience, especially with some of the media stuff that you have going on.
Yeah, I created Fusionary with a dream, and I really was so innocent and optimistic in that dream when I built the company. My dream was all of orthopedic medicine manages us through our chronic joint pain until we're surgical. But every time they say you have pain, why can't they offer a natural solution as an adjunct? And then we can come off the serious stuff sooner. We have a lot of science in PubMed around curcumin for joint pain and how it's as effective as NSAIDs, but instead of having those side effects, it has no side effects comparable to what NSAIDs will do to us. So that to me was really compelling. And I thought, okay, let me just start there. I think I underestimated how hard it is to get in front of orthopedics. So then I started calling on rheumatology because I was like, well, rheumatologists are giving us painkillers as well. They're managing the autoimmune patient with limited tools. Let me offer them some solutions. And over the years, over those 10 years, I really expanded it. I got some mentors on board who said, why are you calling on some of these tough doors? Why don't you talk to all the people who are open and ready to recommend turmeric? You've got functional medicine, integrative medicine, acupuncture, chiropractic, naturopath. They were like, there's 100 doors who are ready for a potent turmeric, and you're just choosing to bang your head against the hardest door. And so that was really eye-opening to me. So the minute I kind of realigned my focus, everything got easier, because if you put a great product in the hand of a practitioner, they know clearly what works and what doesn't. I talk to my practitioners all the time, and sometimes they'll call me and say, hey, the joint solution I was working, they changed something. Something's not working. I need to switch to yours. Can you send it to me today? I'm like, of course, because the practitioner is watching at all times what is happening with their patients and their clients, and they know what's working and what's not. And that to me is really exciting. So being someone who's studying functional medicine, who's already studied Ayurveda, I think it's so compelling when you work with the practitioner groups that have that kind of data and awareness with their patient base. Over the last couple years, about 5 years ago, my team and I decided that since I'm the turmeric girl and it's me who's out there at the events meeting everyone, it would make sense to build me as my own personal brand who gets to teach Ayurveda to the world, because that was my original mission. And so for the last 5 years, I have taught Ayurveda online through social. I have my own TV show in Atlanta, which was such a unique gift that came my way. I have a friend who called and said, I want to create a channel and a show, and I'm creating it around you. And so it's called Vibrant Health with Dr. Shivani. And it's my way to bring this Ayurvedic and holistic integrative wisdom into new pockets and new groups of people. And then a few years ago, I went to a conference that we both go to, and I met the editor of Hay House. And last year, they approved my proposal to write a Hay House book. So I have a whole book on Ayurveda and inflammation coming out next February. So it's a lot happening at once, but I think it's a testament to the fact that the world especially us here in the West, but maybe it's the whole world, needs solutions for inflammation. We're all suffering. And we're seeking ancient modalities. We're seeking that truth and that wisdom that really lands. And I'm just grateful to be part of that. I'm grateful that I feel like turmeric gold and my products were gifted to me, and it's my honor to get to share them with the world. So it's an honor even to have the business that I have.
Yeah. No, it's such a great story. And then obviously I'm acutely aware of your TV show as I knew one of the guests. So
Of course, because Jen was my guest. Yeah, she's awesome. She's so
yeah.
good.
Yeah. It's interesting, you note kind of going into the traditional healthcare approach. There is a large supplement dispensary group that goes to the traditional healthcare shows. And it's funny. It's like in traditional healthcare, you have the Jay-Z conundrum. I got 99 problems and a supplement is not one of them. And I can only imagine how demotivating that must have been.
Oh, it was hard. I've burnt out on my company 10 years in a row. And every other year, I just have to step out of the Western medicine market, recollect myself, collect my joy. And because it's my mountain, I am meant to climb. It is my Everest in this life. I will keep holding that torch because I've seen so much anecdotal data. So I'm so compelled to still help every doctor. And it's maybe not help, but I'm here to empower every doctor with the tool for that patient who's like me, who deserves natural options that work. But I also know that this might take me like the entire rest of my life to make a dent in that market.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
For sure. So let's talk a little bit about turmeric and specifically bioavailable functions, right? So it's not, I think most consumers are aware or have seen a Good Morning America, type of segment on it, but I can go to Sprouts down the road here and there's probably no less than 50 different brands. Yeah. So maybe walk us through Fusionary Formulas and kind of what you really focus on and what sets your product apart.
Sure, for sure. So when I went to build Fusionary and I sat with my factory that's here in the US, I said, look, I want to find the most potent form of curcumin that I can find. And they were like, that's not how you build a supplement company. Just so you know, you find the cheapest ingredients that do the job and you have this beautiful multiple, and supplement companies are meant to be highly profitable. And I was like, I hear you, but my whole PhD is on turmeric. So I'm actually trying to advance the science of turmeric. I want to see in my lifetime turmeric science produced for each system of medicine. So I have a different goal here. Treat me like I'm actually trying to make something that works, and I will figure out the money part later. And I, again, am really innocent and optimistic and childlike in my brain and in my thinking. So I underestimated what that statement would mean and how long it would take for the company to actually get its legs under it. But I'm glad that I approached it the way I did, because at least I made something that works. And so we sat there and we sourced and worked and looked through the science. I had already studied so much of the science, but we found one supplier in India that had an extract of curcumin that landed at 98% grade potency. And that really fascinated me because everyone on the market is 95%. So I was like, does that 3% matter? What difference does it make? And so when I met with that supplier and I've gone to the farms and investigated everything, the form of the extraction is taken in a way where they're trying to land above the standard. Typically in supplements, when we're extracting, people are just trying to reach the standard so that you can charge like you have a standard. So it's different mindsets and different approaches. And when I go to the lab, they're constantly innovating on different ways to work with curcumin to push the bioavailability forward. And so when I was there, they too were like, are you crazy? Like, you already have a great product. Why are you pushing us to do even better? And I said, that's because my client needs it. My end user, all the people who trust me, who take my product for their joint pain every day, they need us to keep improving and keep getting better. So when I was there, it was just so fascinating that when you take curcumin at that, what's essentially a 97 to 98% grade potency that I have, and you pull that extract of curcuminoids in the right proportion, mimicking Mother Nature, that's when it absorbs better, it lands in the body better, and does the job better. And so that's what makes us different. Most supplements that are made that are sold on Amazon or sold at any big box retailer, yeah, at the health food stores, those are better brands. No question. I buy some supplements at health food stores. But the majority of the time, I'm looking to the practitioner groups to ask, what worked for you? Did you see the vitamin D move? Did you see the blood work move? Did you see the stool test move? I don't have time to waste money and effort and time on supplements that don't work. And we know in this market, that's the majority of supplements. And so when I built Fusionary, I sat down with the factory then and I said, listen, we're pulling botanicals out of India. We have to do pre, mid, and post-production testing. We have to know for a fact that what we're making is very potent but very safe because we're putting it into the practitioner's hands. So I've basically driven everyone crazy. I won't ever negotiate on quality or potency. I'm not about a highly profitable company. Unfortunately, everyone around me is like, why not? But I'm actually about, can I deliver the best thing ever? And how do I keep innovating and iterating on that? My team always pushes back. They're like, no, we're not making 8 different turmeric supplements so you can test one idea against the next. But my dream is now that I've had the same thing in a population base for 10 years. Now I kind of expand into, can I help them sleep better so they can reduce their inflammation? I kind of take it into other directions. But I am involved in a lot of clinical research. So I have a turmeric ophthalmology research paper coming out. I have a company, not even a company, I have a professor who's a genetics professor, and we're applying for an NIH grant for a study. So there's a lot of exciting science and innovation coming down the pipeline. And that to me is exciting because that's the legacy I get to leave behind, is how to advance turmeric forward in a way that it's irrefutable, that it should have been used in Western medicine this whole time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, amazing. There was actually a particular research initiative that was looking at the effects of curcumin and turmeric in Gulf War in illness, and they for some reason decided to end it. But it was the one thing in 20 years of research that actually had a measurable effect. And then when the participants were told they couldn't get any more, they went out and started buying it for themselves because they had such a great response.
For sure. And it's interesting to me how many studies get shut down and how much science doesn't get published, even though we proved unequivocally the impact. And I've been part of those studies as well, and they just never get to see the light of day, which is interesting.
So maybe talk a little bit more about kind of the tactical application. Obviously, you're very passionate, and sounds like a wonder supplement. How would you, like when somebody comes to you and they're presenting with joint pain or other issues, how do you think about making a recommendation for it? What's the dosage? Are you looking for any other kind of, common biomarkers or efficacy, HSCRP or something along those lines? So kind of walk us through the clinical approach.
For sure. So what's cool about turmeric is it's such a powerful anti-inflammatory. It affects NF-kappa B, TNF-alpha, COX and LOX. It affects BDNF. It affects amyloid plaques in the brain, AMPK pathways. So the fact that it affects so many pathways from an inflammation standpoint is always the most fascinating thing. I think that's why we have over 17,000 papers on curcumin in PubMed. Like just go in PubMed and type curcumin and it's kind of overwhelming. Back when I was doing my PhD, it was only 10,000 studies. That just shows you the volume of exponential growth studying this one botanical because of how well received it is in the body. And so it's anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, antiviral, antibacterial, antifungal. It also has a lot of longevity applications because it affects our sirtuins. Like I mentioned, the AMPK pathways. We have some research on how it extends telomeres, and I really want to be part of more science around that. It affects glycation. It kills off zombie cells that form in the body. It causes cell apoptosis for cells that are meant to die. It functions like a prebiotic, so it helps increase our good bacteria in the gut and get rid of bad bacteria. It is anti-H. pylori, anti-candida, a lot of those things. And it kills off malignant cells that form in us that shouldn't have been there. So I think of it as this ultimate janitor. I think of it like a Pac-Man that comes along and everything that's like not meant to be, it gets rid of it. So to me, turmeric can be so multifaceted. And I know that that sounds like an overpromise, but the science is there. It's irrefutable that the science is there on these things. What's interesting about when you see patients is typically we go for chronic joint pain because then you know it worked. If I said, hey, just take it as like a cold preventive, you would just take it knowing that like, oh, I shouldn't get sick more likely. I do have a lot of people who've taken it for travel and business travel and said, yeah, I don't get sick anymore. And I'm like, yes, that was one of my big things I was going for because that's how I use it, is for the immune modulating benefits. When it comes to my practitioners, most practitioners say if my patient is inflamed, if HSCRP is up, or they present with any aches, pains, stiffness, those typical inflammaging symptoms, we just reach for turmeric. We know it's going to work and we give them your turmeric. So that's how most of my practitioners think of it. Some of them who deal with patients in the autoimmune community are like, wow, your inflammation relief is designed to be a very powerful anti-inflammatory. It follows the ancient Ayurvedic science. So it has guruchi, boswellia, dried ginger, amla, and this beautiful symphony of herbs to approach inflammation. And so they'll reach for that one first. And then if the patient has more pain and inflammation, they'll add on turmeric gold on top of it. So I work with each practitioner to kind of show them how to reach into the products and use them. But I would say chronic joint pain first. Inflammation causing any other itis or issue in the body is the second reason. Third reason is autoimmune, which we know we need to help the entire system with inflammation. Fourth reason is allergies. A lot of people come with allergies and different issues, and they are looking for something. And I've seen that turmeric can be very effective for that as well.
Mm-hmm. And I realized maybe we should just kind of jump into like what it means to be Ayurvedic medicine, right? So a lot of our practitioners are coming from more of the Western approach, right? And so it looks at Eastern approaches as kind of being woo-woo or kind of out there. Tibetan medicine, Chinese medicine also grouped in that space. I'd love to hear just kind of the quick overview to somebody that maybe not have an understanding of what that means.
For sure. So under the umbrella of complementary and alternative medicine, you have all these different sciences. You have Chinese medicine, which has acupuncture, traditional Chinese medicine. It includes herbology and a lot of other modalities there as well. And I would say Ayurveda is most closely similar to traditional Chinese medicine. You have naturopathic medicine, chiropractic medicine, homeopathy, energy medicine, Reiki, all these different modalities. Ayurveda is typically the last door anybody finds or anybody hears about. So my job in this world is to put Ayurveda into the ring of what we consider when we're looking for an integrative health solution. And what's unique about Ayurveda is it actually has these 5,000-year-old texts that outlined what Western medicine now is. All the surgical specialties, the medical specialties were all written in these texts. And one big thesis or one big hypothesis or teaching out of Ayurveda is that gut is the center of everything. And so I teach these 6 pillars from Ayurveda for my clients in group programs. And next year after the book, I hope to have a certification program for practitioners so they can dive deep into this and bring aspects of Ayurveda into their clinical practices as well. And so I love to teach that the circadian clock, circadian rhythm is from Ayurveda. Most people don't realize that. We're like talking about circadian all over the biohacking world. It originates from Ayurvedic medicine. The idea that gut health is brain health, that there's a gut-brain axis, gut is immunity. We knew that 5,000 years ago in Ayurveda. And so Ayurveda has a profound toolkit around gut health that involves spices, detoxing, how we eat, when we eat, seasonal eating, that can all support really beautiful, robust gut health. Then in Ayurveda, we talk a lot about detoxification and the importance of detoxing at the intersection of seasons. That's when we're most supported to do that detox. And so we teach a lot about lymphatic flow and movement, which a lot of us in the integrative space now do, but the Ayurvedic approach has a different set of tools for that. Then I teach a lot about self-care because the self-care rituals from Ayurveda are actually a daily detox mechanism that we can use. So if you've seen people talk about tongue scraping, oil pulling, these ideas are from Ayurveda. And so I love sharing those with my practitioners and with my clients because they're very effective, simple, nearly free tools that we can use. And then finally, I do teach a lot about super spices because I find those to be the easy, quick solution out of Ayurveda. And once I've given you the quick solution and you're feeling better, then I can ask you to do all the work that I'm going to ask to do that lifestyle that holds the results. And then finally, there's one big thing we teach in Ayurveda, which is the doshas, the individual mind-body constitution. So we do not treat everyone the same. We really look at everyone as, are you more dominant by the air element, dominated by the fire element, or earth and water? And based on the elemental forces within you, we really guide the care of each person. And so my dream is once my book is out next year, I want to show practitioners how to kind of customize to those different groups. It's similar to ectomorph, mesomorph, and these ideas that we have different body types and we should be customizing our care according to those body types.
Yeah. And I think one of the most interesting, I was working with a practitioner who was trying to bridge Eastern and Western medicine. And she was looking at actually mapping kind of the attributes of Tibetan medicine and how it actually translates to biomarkers, even such things as like doing a pulse assessment with in Tibetan medicine is actually heart rate variability, because you're looking at the frequency and the volatility of the pulse rate using, I think, 3 fingers or something like that.
Yes. Yeah, we did the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's super interesting. And I think it has a bit of a stigma kind of being out there, but as you know, it's very much the same fundamental assessments, just labeled in a different way.
Correct. Yeah, I think there's so much symbiosis there. There's so much opportunity for seeing the similarities. As someone who's very into the Western medicine world with the family I'm into and even the business I've built, I only see the similarities. I'm like, we are all trying to help the same person. We just have to expand all our toolkits on both sides. And that's how we're going to support someone the best.
Yeah. One of your key messages, and you kind of briefly touched on this, is self-care doesn't have to be another task. So how do you guide high-performing clients like CEOs or practitioners themselves toward integrating Ayurvedic principles without overwhelming them?
I like to teach people that self-care is non-negotiable. As CEOs and entrepreneurs, sometimes we burn the candle at both ends and burn ourselves out. And Ayurveda is really trying to show us how to build self-care into really tiny slices of time. But by anchoring it in as slices of our day, we're actually tying ourselves into our own circadian rhythm and keeping ourselves more balanced and aligned. So Ayurveda is saying, look, if we're always defying our circadian clock, if we're always fighting against it, we're causing dis-ease, a dysbiotic life. But if we just learn how to align with that rhythm, everything gets easier. So a lot of it is being taught nowadays, like wake up with the sun, set with the sun, sleeping on time. Ayurveda says, put sleep as your first non-negotiable before you even add in a self-care habit. And sleeping 10 to 2 on the circadian clock from Ayurveda is what we call the pitta time of day, the fire time of day, when the sun is highest during the daytime, but that fire is also powerful 10 to 2 at night. And that time is twice as important as the rest of your night's sleep when it comes to clearing the lymphatic system, clearing inflammation, and clearing everything that clogs up inside of us. Ayurveda taught us that up to 3 pounds of waste can form in our lymphatic system of our brain. So we're holding on to so much waste and we're not realizing it. And so by sleeping 10 to 2, which is hard for many of us because we've got so much going on, by sleeping 10 to 2, we're allowing the body to clear all that out. And then in the morning, we pull in new practices like using a copper tongue scraper. And by gently scraping the tongue 7 to 14 times, in Ayurveda, we teach that our tongue, just like in reflexology in Chinese medicine, reflects all the organs of the body. Same thing with our tongue. Our tongue has a reflection of all those organs. And so by gently scraping the tongue, you're going to gently clear all those organs. You're going to detox and you'll be igniting your digestive fire. And so these sounds like over promises and like weird ideas, but I've fixed people's constipation by giving them tongue scraping as a habit. Like I always try to see, can I win with you on the easiest habit that you'll do every day? And if not, yeah, let's move into the supplements. But there's a lot of simple tools, simple spices that can do so much from Ayurveda. And another simple habit that I teach as the self-care rituals is something called tea time is me time. And for some reason, I have no teacup today. I have like this longevity mix, but let's pretend it's a teacup. If you pause and take tea time as me time, could be coffee time, but take a hot beverage and pause maybe 3-4 times a day and tune in with yourself. Just check in and say, how am I doing today? And that's an opportunity to really train our intuition to give us answers. Mine will say really funny things like, you forgot to pay that guy. You forgot to make time for you to eat dinner today. You need to say no to that. I don't really like that guy, that idea. So it's important to give ourselves space because otherwise we're constantly bypassing our intuitive sense, which is really the best guide for us. And so Ayurveda's goal is to help us bring body, mind, and spirit into alignment. That's really the whole goal. And one way Ayurveda does that is teaching us yoga, breath work, self-care, all these things that are just trying to give us those micro moments and micro pauses that'll help us not burn out because we're going guided based on our intuition.
Yeah. So what role do you see personalized dosha profiling playing in modern precision wellness, especially combined with genetic or functional lab data? So we actually have the dosha assessment in our system now, and we see people using it.
Nice.
So, yeah, it plots on a radar plot, so you can see which area is higher, and then you can also retest over time as well. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I love that. So in my book coming out in February in Hay House, I put together a dosha quiz reimagined. And
Okay.
it's a much deeper dosha quiz because what I realized over these last 5, 7 years of working with my clients, the general dosha quiz might not go as deep as we need. We need to understand, are they mentally, physically, emotionally, or in their behavior patterns more one dosha or the other? And so the doshas are basically a way that Ayurveda has shown us how to really understand someone better. Like I mentioned, they're either air, fire, or the earth and water elements. Everyone has a primary dosha and a secondary dosha, unless they are three doshic and truly balanced in all three, but that's rare. Usually you have a primary and a secondary. And so I actually see a profound opportunity. And I put this hypothesis into the book. I think we could dosha quiz everybody and we can easily correlate disease pathology in the broader scientific community tied to
Mhm.
doshas. So you could easily start having everyone as a practitioner dosha quiz their patient, understand the primary element, have a cheat sheet that shows, oh my gosh, they're vata, they're already going to have a tendency towards dryness, insomnia, anxiety, all these things. We know those things are the imbalanced vata state. And then we could easily have those reports ready for them called, these are the recommendations tied to balancing that. But I did find someone who had a standardized dosha quiz. They have not replied back to me. And I'd like to see if I can bring that into clinical trials so
Mhm.
that in the future we have the data sets of what did it mean for this dosha and the data they collected for whatever they were studying. So I think there's such a huge opportunity to merge more Ayurvedic medicine into patient work and research work. And in the future, we'll see how powerfully we correlated the data for so many people. Because
Mhm.
Ayurveda said the same thing for 5,000 years. We just aren't using it enough to prove to ourselves how powerful it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and in terms of turmeric supplementation, what are some of the biggest misconceptions you see among both consumers and practitioners? Are there particular delivery systems or formulations that you found to be most effective?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to turmeric. A lot of times people tell me, I take fresh turmeric and I make my juice out of it. And
Mhm.
I've been told that for a decade now. And I know in the health and wellness world, we say a lot of the time that fresh is better, whole plant is better. And I agree with that for the most part. But at the same time, when we take a plant like turmeric and we dry it into the spice, turmeric spice, you're concentrating it. You're really concentrating it. So if people are going to cook with turmeric, please cook with black pepper or a healthy fat to increase that absorption. But what I want everyone to realize is out of that entire turmeric plant, only 3 to 5% of it is the curcuminoids. So
Mhm.
if you are really taking a turmeric supplement or you're trying to take turmeric for something specific like joint pain or inflammation, taking the turmeric plant when only 3 to 5% is delivering that massive result, it's kind of a waste of time. Like you're not going to get there fast enough. And so that's where I thought, okay, let's dive into curcumin extraction and how we're going to use that curcumin extract to deliver that potent result. So that's my first thing. Now, do people get benefits from taking turmeric shots and juice turmeric and spice turmeric? Yes, it is beneficial. It is a great plant across the board. But in modern day life, we're pretty inflamed. We're dealing with a lot of pathology, a lot of issues in the body, a lot of environmental toxins, stresses, and factors that are causing consistent inflammation in the system. I have not met anyone who's like, yeah, I'm in my 40s and perimenopause is awesome. Or I've not met anyone who's in menopause who's like, yeah, this is great. This is a piece of cake. Everyone's going nuts right now and frustrated. And that's where I think it's a beautiful thing to see the combination of all the worlds. HRT is phenomenal. I'm a big fan of
Mhm.
people who you've had on here, and I'm friends
Mhm.
with so many, and I've tried it all, so I'm a big fan. And then let's bring in the natural and holistic and meet right in the middle and give the best of both worlds. And so when it comes to turmeric and aging, I don't see why we're not all reaching into the spice kit of Ayurveda and taking everything that'll help us win because the adaptogens will help reduce stress. Turmeric itself is so powerful for all the different things that I named, but it is important to take it in the right form at the right dosage to deliver the result. And so in the science, we've shown that 500 milligrams twice a day of curcumin with black pepper is a very effective dose. And it's what's used in most of the clinical trials that are out there. And if there's any practitioners listening, I'm happy to send you the science per issue that you want to know about. I have huge Dropbox folders ready with the science that I use to write my paper. And I love nerding out on curcumin. I was recently on an Alzheimer's summit and I was like, oh my gosh, all I care about is my brain working as I age, and it causes neurogenesis, mitogenesis. It affects our microglia, neuroinflammation. It affects our amyloid plaques. It affects our tau tangles. Like, there's so much new science and even existing science on the power of curcumin for dementia and brain-related issues. So there's a lot of cool things happening. And I wish that for the volume of what we spend on clinical research out there, more of it moved towards turmeric, because I think we would easily show ourselves the power of the Ayurveda botanicals. But what's cool is when you go to India now, they're investing in it. So I was just in Mumbai, it's called now. And in Mumbai, they were doing profound testing for these botanicals. They were doing DNA testing, like you talked about, dosha testing, every type of testing to prove what each botanical does. And they're standardizing from the farm level and the farming strains all the way up till the end. So we're really taking science a lot further in the botanical world as well.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't think there's a market for patented turmeric. So the clinical trials are probably it's always going to be few and far between on a funding perspective. So
I know. I chose a long road in this life. I have a family around me that humors me and lets me have my big dream and keep going, which is nice.
Next question. Many of our practitioners support clients with autoimmune, metabolic, or hormonal challenges. How can an Ayurvedic approach, especially through herbs like turmeric, be safely layered into conventional functional protocols? And then I guess kind of building also on that, is there any contraindications or cross reactions that you need to be aware of, or can it be kind of used in any case?
Sure. I mean, the number one contraindication that we pay attention to in the curcumin world is blood thinners. Curcumin is a vasodilator. So I tell all my doctors, if your patient's on a blood thinner, I do not recommend curcumin. I have heard one cardiologist on stage years ago say that's true for warfarin. It's not true for the new blood thinners that are out there. And I said, I don't have the qualifications to say that. That's on you. But according to me, we are supposed to be really, really careful when it comes to blood thinners and curcumin. Now, when it comes to autoimmune, from what I've seen, rheumatology is seeking solutions to help the patient in a more natural way, because all of my friends, many of my employees who've been diagnosed with autoimmune conditions, the only two options they were given was, here's your hydrochloroquine and here's your Celebrex. Adjust your lifestyle and good luck to you. And that to me is infuriating. As someone who's been a leaky gut patient the majority of my life, and I know that's not full-blown autoimmune, but it's challenging when no one's giving you a bigger, wider toolkit to use for your health. And so autoimmune is something I'm passionate about, especially because I see it exploding in women's health right now. And I think we need a lot more options on the table. And so I do think turmeric and turmeric formulas that have all the different herbs for inflammation can be helpful. And anecdotally, I've seen that significantly. I have a lot of patients who say to me, I was losing my hand function and I wasn't going to be able to open bottles anymore, Shivani, and your product just stopped that right where I was, and I'm holding function, which is a big deal. People need to keep their independence. They need to keep their function. I've had a lot of women who have low-grade fevers and low-grade joint pain and fatigue all the time. And they tell me that they're taking inflammation relief and they're able to keep it at bay. And they're able to be functional, play pickleball, move their bodies, do all the things that they want to do. And so that to me is important. I've had a lot of people who told me, I don't want to be on the biologics. Those are expensive. They have side effects. I needed everything I could take to hold before I had to enter that door. And so I've seen from them as well, turmeric gold inflammation relief has kind of held them so they don't have to go that way. And then the thing is, even though I make a great product, I always wanted to show people this is the lifestyle you can put in place to get rid of taking a product every day. And so that's why I teach so much about it in that direction. But you have autoimmune, you mentioned hormone replacement therapy, endocrine patients. Absolutely. We know that when we're dealing with thyroid conditions, we're dealing with HRT issues. Of course, inflammation is going to have a role. I mean, inflammation and inflammaging have a role in everything. And so that's why every time we can bring down that systemic inflammation, we can help support any of these processes and going better. And then what was the third one you said? Metabolic.
Yeah.
Metabolic health. So curcumin, because it's an anti-inflammatory, when we talk about obesity, it can help with that. It can help with reducing that systemic inflammation, which will help us in our weight loss goals. It's not so direct there. I wouldn't say like take turmeric for weight loss. That's not a claim I would ever make. But I do think that supporting our systemic inflammation will always support us in our metabolic goals as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so from a business development perspective, talk a little bit about the kind of different options and formulations that you put together and kind of where they fit best.
Sure. So I created Turmeric Gold as my beloved child, my first main formula. And Turmeric Gold was made according to the science. So when you look at the curcumin science, it says 500 milligrams curcumin, 4 milligrams black pepper extract. And then I innovated 10 years ago and added turmeric powder for the synergistic effect of curcumin with whole plant. Nowadays, there's a lot of formulas that have that kind of a mixture in them. So that's my number one, flagship product. When people want a great turmeric that actually does something, they take Turmeric Gold. Then I created inflammation relief. And I thought my orthopedic doctors, no one in the West is really going to recommend this to their patients, but I want to make it because I want to prove that the Ayurvedic formulation with the right proportion of herbs and the right synergistic form can function like a symphony to go after inflammation. And so that one has curcumin and guduchi. It has boswellia, dried ginger. It has amla, black pepper. So everything is in the correct proportions. And that formula is actually more loved by anyone who is actually inflamed. So anyone who's autoimmune, everyone who's got that joint pain, they start with inflammation relief. And then about 10 years ago, the orthopedic surgeons were like, well, you know what we did? Our patients have so much pain. We just gave them both together. And just, that is our solution for chronic joint pain. And I looked at them like, I never thought of that. I really thought of them as two separate things for two separate supports. And they combined them and said, that's our pain solution bundle. So I, on my own website, called it Pain Solution Bundle. I was like, thanks for the innovation, guys. And they said, our patients are running in the door every month to buy your product, and they're not even coming in to see us. Like, good job. You got the chronic joint pain patient out of the way. Now we can see our surgical patients. And I thought that was funny. So it's good. Those two formulas are like what we do the majority of. And then after about a couple years, I thought, I'm going to be I started teaching about Ayurveda and sleep. And once I started teaching that, I realized, gosh, the same patient who's chronic joint pain is oftentimes not sleeping well. And do they realize that lack of sleep is not letting them clear the inflammation? They're going to be reliant on this thing forever. So I came up with an Ayurvedic sleep tea that has ashwagandha, brahmi, cardamom, all the Ayurvedic herbs to help relax the mind and the digestive system for a better night's sleep. And then I put a lot of florals on top so it tastes really good. So it's like a delicious treat around 45 minutes before bed, and it'll put you to sleep. So a lot of people just take that as their sleep hygiene ritual and their sleep support. And then I found a sleep gummy that was so effective that I brought that into my product line. I was like, wow, it's 3 milligrams melatonin per 2 gummies, L-theanine and GABA. And so I have a very cult following on this sleep gummy. And I rely on it very heavily for travel. So I'll take it on my big international flights or any overnight flights. I'll take one in the middle of the night if I wake up in the middle of the night. So it's exciting to me to have a tool like that I can reach for. And then after the sleep solutions, I got a lot of requests for menopause. And I kept trying to design a menopause formula. Gosh, there's like so many ways to go about it. So I created a tea first just to test my theory. And that tea has green jasmine tea, shatavari, which is our queen of adaptogenic herbs for reproductive health out of Ayurveda. And then I added 3 types of tulsi in there for their adaptogenic benefits, lychee because it's cooling, and fennel. And so that tea is actually a really beautiful tea for hot flashes, night sweats, and like hot mood, which we can have in perimenopause, menopause phase. And it cools everything down. And I've heard it's a game changer for those who take it. I don't have hot flashes or night sweats, so I can't test that idea yet, but I do take it for perimenopause adaptogenic support. And then the last one I'll share is unwind tea. It's right there, the purple one. I was going to call it anxiety tea because so many of us get home in the evening and we're dealing with kids, work, life, stressors, and maybe, not everyone, but maybe you reach for chocolate or wine. And I know for me, I reach for nachos or chocolate. Those are my tells for how stressful my day is going. And I needed something that would just help me downshift without craving the sugar or the sweets. In Ayurveda, we say if you're reaching for a sweet, it's because you're having stress and anxiety on the inside. You're just trying to cool it down. So I made an adaptogenic tea to cool that feeling down. And so me, my COO, all of us women who know about it, have 2 cups a night, starting at like 4, just to like downshift into managing the kids in the evening. So that's the product line so far. I'm always playing. I would have like 50 formulas by now if I could, but my team is like, no, that's it, Shivani. Like, we got to stick to the focus. And 90% of what I do is turmeric because it's where my heart lies. So yeah.
Amazing. I can imagine the printing, packaging, inventory. Your CFO is probably sweating every time you have an idea.
They are. And I send ideas daily. I'm like, we should. And they're like, no, we shouldn't.
Maybe last question before we go to a Q&A. Maybe just walk us through like a clinical outcome case study, a good example of kind of what we've been touching on from a general perspective, but maybe in a specific, how they presented, what they did, and then what the resolution was.
For sure. So I would say the majority of what we see is chronic joint pain, whether it's just back pain, knee pain, hip pain. That's a lot of what we see in the orthopedic practices, or it's that patient who's losing their hand function, whose like body is stiffening up. And so the majority of people who I've dealt with will take turmeric golden inflammation relief twice a day, morning and afternoon. I like to separate that about 8 hours apart. If you take it with food, which is hopefully with a healthy fat, then you'll get that absorption for blood-brain barrier and everything else as well. Otherwise, it's built for absorption with the black pepper. But I like to mention that because some people are taking it for brain health. So why not get that additional benefit in there? And when you take it twice a day, that's the dosage recommendation. And the results we've seen is joint pain reduced, stiffness reduced, getting function and mobility back. I've had people who told me my back pain is gone, my hip pain is gone, my knee pain is reduced. Sometimes we can't take someone from a 10 to a 0, but we can typically take someone from an 8 to a 2 and hold them at that 2. And a lot of times the feedback we get is, I felt much better, which wasn't sure if it's my life or my turmeric, I don't know. But then I went out of town and I quickly realized that I was missing something, and that was it. And I then acknowledged how pain-free, how much stiffness, and how much benefit it was giving me. And so that's been really fun to see is the clinical anecdotal evidence around people who are able to take it and then not take painkillers. So that's been really cool.
Awesome. Now let's transition to the audience Q&A. Thank you for everyone that's been posting questions in the comments. We'll get to as many as we can. If you're watching as a replay, feel free to post your questions in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a live stream. So first question from Hardy Peak Performance on Instagram. Did you say that there's already a Dosha assessment in Biocanic, or did that wrong? So that's a question for me.
That's great.
Yeah. So in our marketplace, in the template, so Dr. Shivani, we have marketplaces where people can put different assessments. Yeah, there is the Dosha questionnaire in there. I think people love it. It's been working great, along with some of the other more standard ones like MSQs as well. Shameless plug for our programs. If you do want to create an Ayurvedic program that our practitioners can learn from or use with their individuals, we can have a conversation about that and help get that built out for you. So it's a great way for people to grab some of that content to help kind of bolster their knowledge and communication with clients. Next question, how do you guide clients who are already on anti-inflammatory medications or protocols to integrate turmeric or Ayurvedic practices without conflict?
It's a good question. I try not to go against the doctors and the doctor recommendations. A lot of times I ask people, connect me to your doctor. Because when I get in front of the doctor and I say I have a PhD in turmeric, they always kind of laugh and they're like, really? And then they say, can I read it? And I'm like, absolutely. You can read my paper. It's old now, but sure. And I say, can I just send you my top 3 favorite studies on curcumin? And once they read it and they understand it and they anecdotally understand how their colleagues have used it, then they're more open to recommending it alongside as an adjunct solution. A lot of ways that my orthos recommend it to the patient is, look, I'm going to give you what I'm going to give you. That's my standard protocol for post-op or for your care. I'm going to offer you turmeric. It's here. You can call this turmeric girl who made this product. She's a doctor too, and she knows how to talk about the turmeric. And I answer the 800 number of my supplement company still, because I need to answer those questions for my doctors. It's like a doctor line. But what they say is you can come off the other solution faster, and turmeric might get you there because it'll affect that systemic inflammation. But it really is about the doctor's comfort level. I'm not going to stick myself in there and then mess up the protocol with the doctors.
Is there, if I'm taking like anti-inflammatories and then I go on to turmeric, is there I know we talked about blood
Sure.
thinner.
There's no harm. You can take an NSAID and take a turmeric. They're
Mhm.
trying to do the same thing, just from different approaches. And so my goal is always, can we take the natural solution instead? But a lot of people will take both, and that's okay. It just depends on you and your body and your comfort level.
Okay.
Yeah.
The next question is, what markers, clinical or symptomatic, do you look for to assess whether turmeric is having a measurable impact on inflammation in a client? I think we touched on HSCRP from a biomarker perspective, but are there other things that you're looking for?
HSCRP is a great measurement of inflammation. Obviously, we can look at cholesterol as well. I've had a doctor tell me that his cholesterol came back into the normal range and he changed nothing else. He just took the two formulas. I was shocked. I was like, thank you. You were one N of one. I'll keep asking around if people have seen that kind of a result. And then also, obviously their pain scores. A lot of my physicians do WOMAC, pain score measurements on their patients, and that's another way to measure. But in the blood work, yes, HSCRP is probably the best.
Okay, great. And I think we did touch on this, but it's probably good to just say it again. The next question is, are there specific contraindications or populations where you avoid turmeric supplementation or adapt the dosing or form?
Number one is blood thinners, by far. We always say, if you're on a blood thinner, don't take turmeric. It is a vasodilator. It increases nitric oxide in the body. It does a lot of good, but the vasodilating effect is negative if you're going to take a blood thinner. The other one that I've seen is kidney stones. If a person has a history of kidney stones, you just need to be aware, because it has a drying effect. It has a warming effect. So they might need to hydrate more and be aware. But that's pretty much it when we talk about the contraindications.
Awesome. Wow, I'm going to butcher this one. Next question. How do you communicate the benefits of Ayurvedic routines like
Abhyanga.
self-massage? What's the word?
Abhyanga.
Abhyanga, or daily rituals to clients who are skeptical or feel too busy to add anything new?
It's a great question. I teach the Ayurvedic self-care rituals, and I myself cannot fit them all in on a daily basis. So the way I approach it with people is say, start on the weekend. On the weekend, find 1 hour in your weekend and apply all the self-care rituals, because by practicing them, you'll actually get really fast at them. And once you get fast at them, you'll realize which one you need to reach into at different times. So for me, for example, tongue scraping is non-negotiable. That one I'm doing no matter what. Oil pulling, I might do more on the weekend because I have kids, and all morning I'm like, get up, let's move from about 7 to 7:30 or 6:30 to 7:30. I can't oil pull and be silent. So we can adjust them according to our life. Then I love to teach that half the Ayurvedic self-care rituals can actually be moved into the evening and become a sleep hygiene ritual, which we're all going to have more time, most of us, based on our workloads, in the evening. And so I'll say, look, just do the morning stuff, get your movement in, whether you're going to lift or walk or yoga. If you can go for a circadian walk and kiss the sun and align your circadian clock first thing, that would be ideal. But you can also just shift everything into the evening. So I do an evening walk. I'll sit and do dry brushing and Abhyanga massage in the evening, in the last 45 minutes before bed, and use them as my investment into a better sleep and better sleep quality. And so that's how I like to teach it is let's fit Ayurveda in slices, but let's build those slices in. So maybe it's morning, mid-morning, lunch. These are conscious moments where I have tea time is me time and tune in and can fit in self-care, taking my supplements, things like that. Afternoon, evening is circadian walk, and then the self-care rituals can come in to fill my cup again.
Awesome. From your last question, from your perspective, what is the biggest misunderstanding Western practitioners have about Ayurveda, and how do you suggest they begin to exploring it without appropriating or oversimplifying it?
Wow, that's a profound question. I'm pretty practical. And so I think giving Ayurveda credit is enough. I wish everyone would, take all of Ayurveda, study it in grand depth, learn the terminology, and use it properly. But that's a lot to ask. Even I simplify Ayurveda a lot. Like recently, I met a practitioner who wrote a book called Everyday Ayurveda. And when I looked in the book, I was like, you really went for it. You said all the Sanskrit words. Like, wow. Even I don't do that. I simplify it. Why? Because it's more important that the message lands in the person and they take action, to me, than it is that we're perfect about it. I know there's a lot of people who are like, yoga should have credit in all these ways and all these ideas. Yes. Should we give credit where credit is due? Yes, of course.
Mhm.
But if you're going to give a dosha quiz and you're going to simplify it into 3 questions and you'll still apply it to the person, that to me has more meaning than skipping over it. So I think it really just depends on you. Even I've had yoga teachers who are like, oh my gosh, we're saying the words wrong and we put Ganesha there. I'm like, no, no, no. At any piece of the loving wisdom that you want to share, in my opinion, is a good thing. And so any piece of Ayurveda that you can share with everyone, I think is you moving that ball forward and sharing that there are these ancient practices and they are integrative and we can all apply them into our lives, whether it's tongue scraping or anything else. So I'm a big believer in share the wisdom however and wherever you can to support the person in front of you, because that's what we're all here to do.
Amazing. Well, this has been a great discussion. I want to thank everybody who joined us today and those who asked questions. If you're watching as a replay, you can still post your questions and get them answered. Thank you again, Dr. Shivani. Where can people learn more about Fusionary Formulas, follow you, learn about your book?
For sure.
Share that information.
Absolutely. So my website is my name, shivanigupta.com, and I'm on Instagram as @dr.shivanigupta, and I have the Fusionary Health Podcast, so you can find me in any of those places. My supplement company is Fusionary Formulas, and at Fusionary Formulas, we work with practitioners, affiliates, we wholesale into our doctor's offices as well, and so I love working with practitioners and getting it into the hands of those who are healing all the people around us.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. So we've got our best practices next week, our coffee circle as well. And then join us again in 2 weeks when we have Robbie Besner from Dosage on. We're really excited about that. Yeah, but thanks again, Dr. Shivani. Really appreciate you joining us.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, amazing. Thanks, everybody.